He was unwanted before he ever took his first breath. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, to a young, unwed woman who made the heartbreaking decision to give him up for adoption. But fate, or maybe something bigger, had a plan. He was taken in by Paul and Clara Jobs, a working-class couple who couldn't give him wealth, but gave him what mattered more: love, faith, and curiosity. From the very beginning, Steve was different. He questioned everything. He didn't like being told what to do, and he wasn't afraid to challenge authority, even as a child. His teachers said he was a problem student, too curious, too restless, too wild. But one teacher saw something in him and made him a deal. If he finished his work, she'd give him candy and money. That was all it took. Steve excelled. He loved machines, radios, engines, electronics, anything that had a purpose and a mystery. At 13, he met Bill Hewlett, co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, and boldly called him to ask for spare parts for a project. Hewlett was so impressed that he gave the teenager an internship at HP's factory. That was Steve Jobs, fearless, curious, hungry. He once said, "Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower." And from a young age, he decided he would never be a follower. But Steve's path wasn't straight. It was full of chaos, confusion, and what looked like failure. Yet each of those moments would soon become the building blocks of genius. In high school, Steve Jobs enrolled at Reed College, but after just 6 months, he dropped out. He felt guilty that his parents' savings were being wasted on classes that didn't inspire him. But he didn't leave the campus. Instead, he dropped in on courses that did interest him, like typography, calligraphy, and design. He slept on the floor of friends' dorms and survived on free meals at a local temple. Years later, he told graduates at Stanford, "If I had never dropped in on that calligraphy class, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts." He didn't know it then, but he was connecting dots that would define his future. In 1976, at 21, he and Steve Wozniak started Apple in his parents' garage. They had no money, no experience, just a shared obsession with creating computers that were simple, elegant, and personal. When they launched the Apple II, it changed everything. At 25, Jobs was worth over $200 million. His drive for perfection made him both feared and admired. "Real artistship," he told his team. For Jobs, excellence was everything. In 1985, everything changed. After a power struggle inside Apple, Steve Jobs was forced out of the very company he created. He was 30 years old, a visionary at the peak of his career. And suddenly, he had no job, no plan, and no idea who he was without Apple. He said, "It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it." Most people would have broken under that kind of loss. Steve didn't. He said being fired from Apple was the best thing that ever happened to him, because it freed him to start over. He built a new company called Next, focusing on high-end computers for professionals. And though Next wasn't a commercial success, it would later form the backbone of Apple's most important software. At the same time, Steve bought a small animation studio from George Lucas. He renamed it Pixar. There, he applied the same obsession with beauty and purpose, only this time to storytelling. Pixar released Toy Story in 1995, and it became the world's first full-length computer animated film. It won Oscars, broke records, and changed animation forever. Steve Jobs, the man who had been cast out, had quietly built another empire. Sometimes the setback is just the setup for your greatest comeback. In 1997, Apple was dying. The company was losing billions. Its stock was collapsing. And in a twist of fate, Apple decided to buy Next, bringing Steve Jobs back home. The man they had fired was now their last hope. He returned quietly. No revenge, no bitterness, just purpose and determination. He simplified everything, cut 70% of the product line, focused only on excellence and innovation. He said, "Focus is about saying no." Then came the rebirth. 1998. The iMac. Bold, colorful, friendly, and approachable. 2001. The iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket, changing how we listen to music forever. 2007. The iPhone. A revolution that redefined technology and communication forever. 2010. The iPad. A device no one knew they needed until they couldn't live without it. Jobs believed in merging art and engineering, emotion and logic. He said, "Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works." Under his leadership, Apple didn't just make products. It made experiences. It made emotion. The rebel who didn't fit in became the man who reshaped how the world connects. In 2003, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He kept working, kept leading, kept dreaming, until his body couldn't keep up with his mind. He once said, "Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose." His illness changed how he saw everything. He became even more focused on meaning, not money, not fame, but purpose. At his Stanford commencement speech in 2005, he told graduates, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." Even in pain, he radiated clarity. He encouraged people to take risks, to follow their hearts, to be brave enough to be different. He passed away on October 5, 2011, at just 56 years old. The world mourned. But his influence didn't die. It multiplied. Today, his vision lives in every iPhone, every screen, every creative who dares to dream differently. Steve Jobs' life wasn't about technology. It was about faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your vision, faith in your purpose. He failed, he fell, he got fired, he got sick, and still he changed the world. Because in the end, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who actually do.